Ross Griffin here again from Inventing Construction, and today I have a good colleague of mine, Sean O'Connor, aka Sean John, aka the Kerry Man. Sean, maybe you can give a little bit of introduction to yourself.
I don't think there's
a short one now, not a long one, Sean. We know what you're like when you get talking.
Appreciate that horrific introduction. But thanks, Ross. So a little introduction on myself then. I've been working in construction for over 20 years. The first 10, 12 years I spent with consultants.
Yeah.
Some very good people. I worked in a variety of sectors. I worked on everything from estimating cost planning to preparing tenders, contract negotiations, all through contract admin. Worked on some very significant projects, big projects. Then over the next...
National, international, Sean?
Both actually. I worked in Canada for a while, the UK, Ireland, Egypt for a little bit. We worked in a little bit in China, but I suppose my experience then rolled on to working with a developer for about the next 8 or so years. Again, some very good experience there. Worked with some incredible people. Worked on some fantastic projects that I'm proud of, really decent stuff.
Excellent.
But I really focused on dispute resolution. I kind of saw that early days as an issue in the industry.
Yeah.
So I upskilled myself there slightly. So I worked on dispute resolution, contract admin, as well as data management within projects. Yeah. So that was fundamental. Yeah. I saw that being a gap actually in the industry of how we retain and use our data.
Yeah, yeah.
We as an industry, we lose so much good quality information that could be used for multiple purposes, and we duplicate the effort so many times. So, but it was I see that a lot on the claim stuff I do, the loss of data.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're just enjoying life in West Kerry.
And now I've joined KOSMOS, which is a really good experience.
Yeah, excellent. And it's interesting so that our topic today is client relationships, you being on the client side for such a long time, but also the other side of the table. And the subtopics we're going to talk about, we're kind of going to get into something here, I guess, that's a little bit controversial as well. And not many people would bring this to the front to discuss, but we're going to talk about clients not listening to their consultants, the consultants not advising their clients correctly. It's a two-way game here, right? It flows both ways.
100%.
Egos need to be managed.
I prefer if you didn't mention me again. But
egos again, right? Yeah, by the time we get to the end of this, it'll be interesting to see who has the bigger one. And what to look out for, which is more important, especially for our young QSs starting out here, you know. But let's get into it, Sean. In your experience then as working on both sides of the table, both as a consultant and a client, you know, have you come across clients, even in your own past experience, that they just are not listening to the consultants, their advisory board, whatever the case may be?
I guess the key thing here is, like, everything in life depends. And I would have said it's all about communication. And it's not about our clients listening or the consultants asking the right questions or not listening themselves. I think the key thing that I found is consultants should get the best understanding they can from their clients of what the client is looking for, as opposed to just providing the service that they've rolled off the shelf. They know probably worked elsewhere, but just because it worked elsewhere may not work for that client. They're the ones who are now paying you the money. Yeah. And the advice that I have from the years I've been working as a client is, I was happy to pay people to advise me, and I was. But I was looking for them to advise me in a particular way and in a reporting format structure that enabled my business to not duplicate that information.
So is your advice then in that initial stage, the reason clients aren't listening is maybe they're not getting the right advice? Is there a workshop requirement, a team building aspect needed? Again, this is project depending on the size of the project and project specific. Of course, small projects, you struggle to have the available capital to have team workshops, team building events, that type of thing. But how do you get to know your client then as a consultant?
Well, anybody who's going to pay you money, surely they want to advise you on what type of information they're looking for. Most clients are focused on their business. They'll know their business better than you will. Like if you think you know their business, then you should be working in their firm. But from my experience, they're more focused on their internal deliverables, their internal metrics. And really what you have to do is you have to go and meet them. You have to have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, sit with them, understand what are their business looking for. Because if you do that, you'll become much closer to them. The advice you're going to be giving them isn't going to be just reporting, it'll be advice. Because at that point, they'll pull you into their business because they'll realize they're not duplicating. They don't have to pay somebody else to reprocess your information. What a waste of money that would be. But that is constantly happening. I mean, it happened a lot. So for me, that initial have a cup of tea with them, go and meet them. And now the way tech is, you can go and we can sit in front of our clients way better than we did before. Like 20,
the accessibility,
15, absolutely. It's to suit your client's needs. So at any time you can sit in front of them and see from their reaction, is it working? Is it not? How can we improve it? They're simple questions. I wouldn't have got asked that 2 or 3 times over a decade.
So then, so in relation to clients not listening, it feels like perhaps consultants aren't really asking the right questions, are not directing the client in the right way. Maybe, as you mentioned, they don't understand the client because they haven't really spent the time. So then the consultants, and we're consultants today, right? So we have to take this, our own advice as well, I'm assuming here. But then it's not a one brush kind of paints all, not a one shoe fits all situation as a consultant. You really need to understand your client. So a lot of the advice today given by consultants perhaps doesn't really fit the client's needs, the business, as you mentioned.
So as I said earlier, like everything depends in life. And I'm not saying all consultants, some consultants I work with, and some consultants that work for me are fantastic at doing it. It's just when anybody spends money, I always look at money, you have to look at it as you're spending your own. When anyone spends that money, you should go and see them to make sure that that's what they were looking for. You know, that's pretty fundamental.
Yeah. But often, like my past experience, both on the contractor side, the consultant side, client side, often the advice consultants are given actually doesn't really fit the project, the client's business structure. And sometimes they're not interested and perhaps not capable of actually advising on that particular topic, if you like.
Again, it comes down to experience for me, for the experience of the consultancy I was getting in place and the people. So there's a difference between reporting and advising. You have to have some war wounds. You have to be in the trenches to give advice. You know, if you just have somebody who's reporting as a client, if you were sitting there and someone's just reporting to you, I would look long and hard at why you're paying that money, because you don't want someone who's sleeping, walking in the trench with you. That's a bad place. You need somebody who's actively engaging, who's going to be coming to you, bearing in mind you're the client. They should be coming to you, asking you how your day is, and then going, how can I help? You're looking for added value. The day of manually trenching through bills of quantities, yes, that still has a place, but through the use of BIM and data, we're advancing that to a point where that'll become automated.
And it's becoming less and less really of that delivery, if you like, in terms of manpower.
I always looked at who's bringing intelligence. And that's the key. And it's the same for what we're now doing for our clients. It's about intelligence. It's about understanding the supply chain, understanding who the suppliers are, what products are out there, what tech is out there, and really what are the pitfalls for our particular clients, i.e. is the product fit for purpose after they're using it?
And what about giving advice that the client doesn't want to hear? How do you approach that? If you, again, your experience, yeah.
So again, it needs to come from somebody who's had some battle scars. So somebody who might be sitting there who's just kind of reporting to me, not really giving me the information, and then saying, well, you need to stop. That wouldn't go down. That wouldn't be what I'd be looking for. They need to have the relevant experience. Doesn't matter their age, but the experience to give that. But I definitely would always want somebody who challenges the logic of what we're doing. And there's a fundamental here. Someone who's the courage and the strength and the knowledge to say hold or stop is more valuable to you than someone who's just saying yes. Because there's been times where in my career which we probably should have said hold, or I should have taken the task off of somebody much earlier, because the risk did happen. They just didn't inform me early enough, because it would have reduced the pain or the stress I would have gone through. And likewise, there's times, big calls sometimes require people to say, stop the project and reset it.
And that's an interesting one then. So as a consultant, you're advising your client in a certain direction. That direction really is a difficult decision to take, often we see our clients not taking the decision because of the personal impact that decision might have from them within their environment. Not about the project. I'm talking about, their career, how they speak to the board, the powers that be that sit above. And often we see is people sit back, not taking a decision. At that moment in time, there's probably 3, 4, 5 directions the project could go, 4 or 5 decisions a client could take. Each week and day that goes by, one of those possibilities falls away because it's now the time is gone, you've gone too far, and eventually you're left with no choice, one choice or no choice. And a lot of people seem to do that.
You're left with spending a lot of money. Ultimately, the procrastination in making that decision will lead you to a place where ultimately the client will have to foot the bill.
Well, that's the inevitability of anything anyway on projects. All risks sit with the client regardless of whether you transfer it or not, I would argue.
I'd argue slightly different to that, because at a very outset, if the client knew they'd have to spend 10, 15, maybe 15% more, that may cause a situation where the site doesn't fit, the project doesn't work, and the best thing for that business is to step away and save that money and reinvest it elsewhere. That's the right decision for that business. We are being brought in to provide that advice, and we've got a professional code of conduct to stand by, and people who are paid should have the courage to step up and say that. That's what we're there for. We're not there to just take the coin and go, this will be fine. In my experience, it hasn't been.
Yeah, it's good consultancy, I would say, to really step up and be brave, as you say, have the courage to actually advise your clients in that direction. And as you mentioned, I think it is important to understand the experience, the knowledge that person is bringing to the table. What is their background? Understand that first as a client, and again, both ways. Understand your client as well as a consultant, their background, their knowledge base, etc.
If you sat down with somebody and you had that cup of tea initially or a cup of coffee, you're in a place where just as two people, you'll get to know each other a small bit. Understand your consultant, understand a little bit about their experience, because they're going to be bringing something that you're paying for ultimately, like the client will be paying for. And you want to know, are they the right fit for me? Because we should all bring something to our client's business where lessons learned, we should be bringing something that they can then build on. Because how many projects have people worked on that the lessons learned, those experiences
they go nowhere.
Rolled forward.
They go nowhere.
They're left, it's just bad data management. If you look at it like that, and that's where that's where we're now going to, data management.
We hear a lot in the industry, and we come across it quite a bit, I would say, when within the client organization, the consultant organization, is difficult profiles managing, whether they're project managers, project directors, commercial managers, commercial directors, BIM coordinators. It doesn't really matter, but the big thing really here is egos. And I think that as we move through time and construction progresses and we become more digitized, I'm kind of hoping that the ego
replaced by robots is what you're going.
Basically, yeah, the ego piece of it comes out, right? No, but I'm if you move back into the traditional construction, ego was a big thing, that macho kind of I'm the leader, I'm the man type scenario, or woman. And right now it's kind of it's beginning to soften slightly because we're now mixing both tech, digitization, different profiles within the organization. But how do you manage that ego when you're advising a client, and no matter what advice you're giving them, what information you're putting in front of them, they're going, well, I don't actually really care what you're telling me, Sean. I've been here for forever, and this is how we always do it.
From my experience, it's good to have a personality. And some of my previous consultants may say I was the person that needed to be managed. That's not true, of course, and they're wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But personality is a good thing in a project, and it's nice to have it because we come to work to enjoy it. Majority of people do what they do because they enjoy it and they like it. But ego is a bad thing. And we've all, I've worked with a number of people in my career, I won't name them just yet.
Just yet,
But they
just
brought
check the credits later on. You'll see it at the bottom.
We they bring a negative, toxic environment, which really what it is, that bad apple, unfortunately, nearly takes out everything. And it's important, and it is a responsibility for those over projects, and it could be even those over the businesses, that they have a duty really to ensure that that's weeded out. Like in my experience, what I found over the last 15 years in dispute, because I've really worked on dispute resolution for the last 15 years, it's those people that have caused the majority of, they've either made I don't mind making a wrong decision. People just make decisions, and sometimes that's not their fault, but it's mainly been about relationships not working. And then people, unfortunately, not following those people.
And that's generally individuals against each other, I guess, right? That the characters clash. But something came into my mind there as you were talking. I would say, if you've ever used the phrase, "this is how we've always done it," you need to check yourself.
So one of the key things that I really kind of, I suppose, my experience has taught me in the last few years. So conflict is thinking. If you think of conflict as thinking, and just because somebody might be animated in front of you, it's just because they mightn't be able to articulate themselves. They mightn't be able to get the point across that they're trying desperately to make. But if you can realign your mindset to conflict as thinking, you get to a point where you start to ask, what are they telling me? What are they saying that I don't get, that they're really getting animated about? And it actually helps the person on the receiving end ask why. It helps them understand. And if you put that olive branch out to somebody and you say, look, I can see you're passionate about this. I'm just not getting it. You're telling me that the door is blue. I can't see it. What am I missing here? And they're unable, or they don't want to go through that with you. Then I would have said you should look at replacing that person. Not the person who's asking why. They're trying, because it's about perception. But it takes a long time to realign that.
I would say egos in a room it can be toxic, and it can really bring down the morale of projects and teams. The negativity that is around that, and it's something that it needs to be looked at. Again, I would say, by the people that sit above, if they are hearing this feedback, decisions need to be taken in order to remove that negativity from the project, because the project will only go one way. It's
sometimes those egos aren't even in the room. Like, the problem is I find the fallout of certain egos will be that others think they're carrying that flame, which will go down well later. That doesn't work.
But that's a toxic situation that has been created by that ego, right? It's been transferred onto other people because of that environment and the culture that ego has created, right? So it is like a cancer within the room, the project, the team, and needs to be cut as quickly as possible.
Would you look at the collaborative environment that's now being created, say, being principled with the use of BIM? So it's taking out some of those idiosyncrasies that exist when people interface with each other, because it's about data. Ultimately, you're trying to get to a common goal that the written word, in whatever language it may be, is clear. Because the communication...
And understood.
Because the communication between people, sometimes 3 people have a conversation, 3 different answers. Get that clarity in, and I'm not using BIM, I'm using in data. Get it clear in whatever document or control function the control function you're using to do it.
Talking about data, right? We're in this transitionary period within construction. We have what could be looked at is the old guard transitioning into the new guard. So we have this crossover period we're now going through. So data might not be it could be the answer, but might not be understood. And often, even if the data is presented to you, showing you that the direction you need to take is Y, the person looking at it won't understand what it is actually telling them.
That will apply to, I'm going to say, on the balance, it might be 5 people out of 10 will accept the data. That's up to their business then to you're not going to win the war with everybody. You need to be in a place where, on the balance, certain clients will warm to that, the logical nature of it. Others, that's going to be their choice. But I think if we are actively as consultants approaching people in a manner which is logical, is clear, that there's very little loss, and the intent is to improve or better their business, and they don't take that on, that's their choice.
My experience, I would say, when it comes to egos, is often egos try to catch you out. They have this perception of you as a consultant, as individuals, and they're looking for some way to really remove you from the project. And I was having this.
Was that you personally, or
that was me personally, right? Yeah. But I was having this thought about, how do you manage these egos in this situation? And I always find that honesty and transparency is key to this, because defending an honest answer, defending it with transparency, means that you have absolutely nothing to really hide. It's there, it's open, and any individual can look as deep as they want into that information, but they won't find anything that you're hiding, if that makes sense, because you're not hiding anything.
But if you go back to that type of intent, that's going to bring collaboration. So if, as a consultant, we are exhibiting exactly the traits that you're saying, everybody can look at what we're doing. Everyone can add to it, amend it, modify it, do whatever they want. And then it becomes the teams. Ultimately, it falls to one person to be responsible, because that's what they're paying you for. But you want to be in a place where that data is challenged in the right way, at the right time, before the next guy gets it. Because ultimately, this comes down to, what do? We exist to build something. We exist to, and I won't say as Quantity Surveyors particularly, but we exist so that we're trying to build a factory, whether it's apartments, whether it's commercial office, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, that client wants to use it. And if we're not advising our clients in the best interest of that product, in that project, we shouldn't be paid.
No, and you can see the most successful projects you've ever been on, and the most enjoyable are the leaders of those projects. Generally, are good personalities. They're open, kind of honest individuals. There's no kind of hidden agendas per se, even though politics is everywhere within the built environment, within construction. But generally, those projects are the best kind of managed, and the ones you really remember. I would.
In businesses, one thing I would advise every consultant is try and get unity in their client. And I'd ask every client to get unity in their team before major milestones are moved on from. So obviously, egos exist, issues will arise, and every project, we're only human. Every project will have issues. However, if you try and move forward as a team, whether that's a client team, consultant team, move to go forward in unity, then at least there'll be less people who can come out of the woodwork and get you later. So I would certainly look to whether it be a digital sign-off process or some type of a presentation process, so that then everybody in the client team goes, that's what we're buying. We're buying blue doors. And if anyone here thinks that that's not a good idea, now is the time to speak. Because if you don't have that unity, what will happen is, and it may happen at various levels in companies, and that's the real destroyer projects. You have bought something that somebody has decided they now don't want, because hindsight's 2020. But at least if you've their buy-in at a very early stage, or as you go along, we all make mistakes and we can do changes. And most companies and people will respond positively if you have that transparent nature and go, look, we don't want 10 of these, we now need 50. They'll price it fairly. I've found my experience of contractors or subcontractors, they're good people. They are good, honest people who are looking to make a margin, just like every other business. And we have a duty to ensure that fairness exists. This is not about the lowest price. This is about getting it for a price that works for both businesses to move forward.
Yeah. Lowest price, anything needs to be removed from it. It's quality over price in my view. And it's that kind of that value that the entire package is, not just the bottom line, right?
It may be after a process, and that you come out that the lowest price in that situation wins. Fantastic, says I. However, it may have unknowns in it that later gets you. Of course, what we're looking for is outturn cost. We're looking for, the as-built price.
Yeah, but I guess on topic, off topic there a little bit, but it sounds like a very negative discussion we're having here around clients not listening, consultants not advising, egos and all. But I think it's just the reality of the day-to-day, and that's just it.
It's the practicalities that the working life brings. We have it in every office in the country. We have it in every country. It's about just acknowledging it. And I would have said road mapping it slightly so that you have a better relationship. The better the team communicates and the clearer they do, and the more inclusive it is. Inclusive by setting the boundaries of who's responsible for what. Working within that contractual framework, that's a good place to be. Now, it varies from geography to geography how litigious or contractual people are, but at least if they're clear on what they're responsible for, it will help.
So no, it's good. We've talked a little bit about clients not listening now and consultants not advising. Both are challenging. Honesty, I think, is what we're saying. You need to have experience. Egos are something that need to be managed on every single project. But for the listeners out there who are struggling on their projects, for the young guys and girls that are now joining the profession and will interact with this in their career because it's inevitability. This is just reality with working with humans, I'm afraid. Kind of what advice would you be giving them? Let's take the existing projects right now where people are struggling with egos.
We're talking about a 1% or 2% of my career. It's very de minimis. Now, the other thing is, it will improve your skill set. You will learn to understand what you will work with, what you will tolerate, what you won't. Everybody needs to be professional. That's a basis. If someone isn't professional with you, I'd escalate it accordingly, whether that's within your own team and then your own team within the client's team. Nobody should be behaving in an unprofessional manner. That's fundamental. There will always be challenges. And I would have said, I try to understand the other person's perspective because you don't know what's happened at home that day. You don't know what's happened in their life.
Benefited out always.
Absolutely. And somebody may it just might be a bad day for them.
Yeah. But I also like your cup of tea analogy. Just sit down and talk with the person, find out what's going on with them. The reality is maybe they're out of their depth. They're under pressure. This is all new for them as well, and building that trust will help.
And definitely for someone who's got 3, 4, 5 years experience, you're at the right point in your career to ask as many questions as you can. There's no wrong question.
You should be a sponge soaking it up.
And if somebody who's working with you, who may be in a senior position, who isn't helping you in that way, I would then seek advice elsewhere in the company of who else could help you, because there surely is more than one.
Especially in organizations, it comes back to that honesty aspect, honesty with yourself as well. I think especially for the newly graduated and the guys with the 3, 4, 5, they should be sponges soaking this up and challenging, like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And if it's a case you get into a situation where an ego takes over within the room, and is not acting professionally, then I would say that, escalate it, speak to someone, speak to your colleagues, see what direction you should go. But I kind of struggle a little bit with client relationships, I guess, right? I feel that the relationship aspect is you need to be an extrovert in order to be able to be comfortable with speaking to people and all of that kind of jazz, if you like. But maybe I'm wrong, right?
For me, when I was a client, it was about who was bringing intelligence. It didn't matter if it was written, spoken, whichever form it took. And I would say we're definitely in a field of using analytics to help us. And someone who can bring intelligence, whether that be who the suppliers are in the market, who the players are, what the price point is of a product, what new tech is coming online. Now, I'm a tried and tested kind of guy, but to understand what's out there, what value it has, that's worth listening to.
Yeah. So I will bring back to the young graduate QSs, and they're coming into an industry that's in a huge transitionary period, and they're in the best position to challenge, I would say, clients. Not the client relationship. Maybe they're in a position to do that. Maybe they get close enough, but certainly challenge the consultants in terms of how we communicate with our clients. talking about analytics, talking about data, pushing that boundary a little bit in order to be able to improve that for clients. I think there's opportunities there. And when we speak about ego, we're of course not speaking about egos within just a client organization. It's also within your own organization, within your own room, within your own team,
So the other piece I'd add there is, not all, but some of the younger members of the team, some of the more junior perhaps, maybe not that junior, but they're going to be exposed to a lot more tech or have visibility of it than other members of the team. Because if you take the average, say, person's workload every week, they have to perform the tasks they have to do for the clients they have, try to win more clients, try to win more work, and you're supposed to develop your business in new tech areas. So it should be, I would absolutely advocate every business give a voice or a forum to people in the team to be able to come forward with how they can improve it in a collaborative way, because otherwise you're really losing out for your clients, because there's so much good stuff out there. Now there's a lot of other stuff that I wouldn't take on, but there's some really good stuff out there to automate tasks in a way that then we can spend more time educating and developing our teams, and educating and developing our clients, finding out what our clients really want. So you might be producing a 40-page report. They only use 3 pages. So go and see the client and say, this is taking me, I can give you the benefit of the cashback, I can give you the benefit of the fee, or I can give you these extra services instead. How fantastic would you be as a client if someone came in and said that to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it takes me back to a comment I said earlier about the client understanding what it is that they're looking at also, right? So again, tradition has it that a monthly report, a quarterly report is submitted. No one actually reads it. Is there actual benefit on it? What's the alternative to that?
I used to read those reports.
Yeah. It's very valid, and actually we talk a lot about it on the next topic of the podcast in terms of clients need to change, but we'll get back to that one. But I think it's been interesting. This particular topic on relationships and egos. Again, it's something that we don't talk about enough. Perhaps it's part of. I would like to hear it more on projects at the kickoff, at the beginning, to understand. What does this really mean in terms of ego and how damaging it can be to projects? A bit of a more open conversation maybe will help to soften the impact that it could have on projects,
I guess one final point for me really is we really need to think about people's mental health as well in that environment, because this is really 1% of the projects, maybe a bit more. It's a very small, very, very small amount. But however, we do want everyone in that wider team to actively engage in the project, because the project success is built on everybody in that team, but it really will come down to that one weak link who ultimately topples it. And it could be down to money, it could be down to program, it could be down to the quality on site, but it's about, because all of those things trickle into every aspect of the job of why it's seen as success or failure. But you really want to be in a place where your team are engaging in a good way, in a collaborative environment. It'll absolutely save you money as a client. And people will want to do the next job.
And that's what I was just going to say. It's not all about the money. I say that quite often. I know we're quantity surveyors and cost managers.
But it's not.
We try to say to the client, forget about that for a minute. If you get the team right, get the project set up right, the rest will follow.
The outturn cost, without a doubt, will be less.
Will follow. Yeah,
I've seen that on multiple projects. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So that's, I guess that's our closing comment. Really, is that a good team environment, good working culture will generally drive value. Try to identify that ego early, discuss it openly in order to be able to soften the impact that it has on projects. But more communication, as you mentioned, with our clients, between client and consultant, to make sure you're getting the right advice. And one thing I really liked was you need to be brave. As a client, you need to be brave. As a consultant, you need to be brave in order to the advice you're giving. So thank you very much, Sean, for that. One final comment. We haven't seen Ilya in ages. I don't know. Do you have any idea where she is these days? No. Does anybody know where she is?
Maybe you made up a stage name for Ilya.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Next time on the podcast, perhaps. Yeah, we'll reveal it. Cheers, Sean.
Okay, goodbye.
Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes we would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.